Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If you can take your seats, please. So this session, maybe I'll introduce myself first, because I'm from the supply chain side, for those of you who have been only in the automotive IT. I'm the founder and publisher of Automotive Logistics, particularly, I guess, in charge of the automotive logistics supply chain portion of the conference. But one of the things we wanted to do, the reason the conferences have been co-located, is because of the need, perhaps, for better communication between these two important sectors. So the next two sessions, this session and the one after lunch, is where we bring the two sides together. And what I wanted to do to begin with is just to get an understanding of this interaction between automotive IT and automotive supply chain and logistics. You've got red and green cards in front of you. So these are for snap polls. So I just wanted to ask a question. Do you think it's important for automotive logistics and supply chain to be connected with automotive IT, or are they two separate functions? So green if you think they should work together, should have better interaction, and red if you think that they should work separately. Excuse me. Well, definitely by far, it should be that they should be working more closely together, although there were one or two exceptions. But it's interesting. So hopefully, it supports our decision to co-locate the two events. The second question is, who thinks that the two organizations actually do work very well together? Is it just an aim that we'd like to do, but who thinks that they actually do already work closely together? Is there a good relationship? So again, green if you think they do work well together, red if you think there's a lot more work to be done. So this is a little bit more mixed. I think, there's still, I would say, the majority were green cards, which means you think that we are going in the right direction and the two organizations or functions within your companies are working well. The third question, which is a little bit more, perhaps controversial, is who do you think should lead the relationship? And the good thing about it being just two options is there isn't a kind of middle ground. Who do you think should lead the relationship? Green if you think it should be automotive logistics and supply chain should lead the relationships, perhaps because they've got the pain points, or do you think it should be the CIOs and the automotive IT departments that should lead the relationships because perhaps they've got a better understanding of what the technology does or is and how it works? So green for logistics, red for IT. So again, the majority is logistics and supply chain, but there was a bigger smattering of IT than perhaps we have had in the past. So that's just to get an idea of what the audience thinks at this moment in time. So I think that was just to give us a better idea of how it should be. So, but I'll start by asking that question more directly, that question more directly to the panel. And I think I'll start with Dana on the far side, because Dana McBrien, and I should have introduced the panel, Dana McBrien from the far side is an Associate Chief Advisor for Supply Chain and Logistics at Honda, primarily with an inbound logistics focus. Next to him is Shakot, who's a CIO from ZF. From Schaeffler, sorry. from Schaeffler. Then Benoit Montroy on this side is from Georgia Tech, works in is the leader of the supply chain department at Georgia Tech. And then on this side from Volkswagen is Paulo Monteiro, again a senior manager for supply chain at Volkswagen Group of America. But to Dana, one of the ideas for kind of linking this a little bit is a few years ago, Christopher did an interview with you, and we felt there that it helped improve the communication between the logistics and supply chain teams and IT. So, just starting with you about that relationship, how is it, how did it develop, and what are the benefits of working together?
Well, I think the important part about the collaboration between the business side and the IT side is that, well, number one, the IT side's not going to understand logistics as well as the business side, of course. So there's a degree of education that has to take place, and we've been doing that for, in earnest, for probably the last 5 years. And it includes drawing our IT counterparts into venues like this. Unfortunately, they couldn't attend this week. But it's important for them to understand what the industry problems are. So when we start talking about how to solve them, they already have some idea of what we're trying to solve. So I think that there's almost a point where those two teams have to be almost intertwined. And we've been working towards that, like I said, for several years with some pretty good success. Now, it's difficult for them to, if you're talking about doing outside applications, very difficult for them to keep up with the industry, so we have to kind of feed those ideas. But our IT department has been very willing to look at the applications, try to understand how they interact with our current systems, where we need to interface. But if we decide we're going to build them internally, that education it speeds the process quite a bit, because they already have an understanding of what the challenges are and already have some idea of how to bring that solution to the table.
Okay, thank you. And Shukat Bamani, as well as being the CIO, you're the Chief Digital Officer, and digitalization is the big thing. So what is your perspective of working with the supply chain and other divisions in your company?
I think, again, as we discussed yesterday, that IT is or will be an integral part of all aspects of our business, whether you are in supply chain or if you are in business units, production, purchasing, or any other aspects. And it will not be feasible for IT to take a lead role in all aspects. So I think I agree in a sense that each business unit has to take the lead, whether you're part of supply chain, if you're part of purchasing or quality or shop floor management or any other aspects of the business. I think those functions will have to take a lead because they have a better pulse of their business and their needs. And IT has to take the support role with them. Saying that, I would say it's still that the relationship has to be more a partnership relationship, So as long as we maintain that partnership relationship, I think it's fair to say that the logistics and supply chain should take a lead in terms of defining the requirement, defining the customer needs, and IT has to support to see how do we fulfill those needs and requirements.
Mm-hmm. Benoit, as a kind of independent, you might say, how do you see the relationships when you're talking to various companies and organizations?
Essentially, I'd like to reframe a bit the question, okay? In a lot of the digital transformation that I've seen, at least the successful one, or the ones that are heading in the direction that seems to be going nice, is it's not about production transformation or digitalization. It's not about digital supply chain by itself. It's much more about a transformation of the capabilities of the company, of the business, and how we want to treat our customers, how we want to, in which niche are we going to do more service, what is it that we want to become, what is it that we're not able to do now that we'd like to do. And this has to be harmonized very carefully between the market side, the engineering side, the supply chain side, the production side, and so on. So to me, there's need for somebody or some organization to take the lead at this holistic perspective, okay, that takes the full business perspective. We can call them the business model innovators if you want. And then, okay, we know that the IT will be enabling all this, so they must be part of the game, they must see the overall, but they're not driving this fundamental transformation, except when the guy that or the gal that is at the top has had very broad experience, okay? And then you get with the supply chain. Now, it's fine to have the responsibility for the chunk of the picture that is theirs, but it has to be harmonized with the rest. I've lived, like even a month and a half ago, a case where the left end was doing something completely inverse of what was intended by the right end, okay? But completely, okay, in there. I'm not gonna name it, it was too dramatic, but we're kind of in that process, and gosh, this is the kind of stuff that we must at all costs try to avoid, so that we're working together. So then you're going to get in pilots, and the pilots, you don't want people to throw rocks at each other. Okay, you want to make sure that they're going to work together and they build this synergy, and each one is trying to be the best, but for a common picture. So it's not the answer you wanted, but for us, that's mostly the kind of target we're after.
Okay, Paulo.
Well, I have a very pragmatic approach of this question. I'm a business user, so IT is my service provider, and I'm also a service provider for my customer production. So we have to live together, but I am the one that have to define the set of rules and expectations. But we can do this two ways. And I remember when I arrived 5 years ago to Chattanooga, every time we needed a change request, I think most of the IT guys over here know what I'm talking about. Change request would be a very described process with a swim lane and with all the details. And even though after all that detailing, as was just referred, sometimes it looked like that the left end was not talking to the right hand. So we have changed the approach. My IT department is extremely collaborative in having a close connection. And because they are structured by business units, so we have specialists dedicated for each one of the parts of the supply chain. We have shop floor, we have material planning. They have immersed directly on our business. Only knowing the business allow you to read the scope of work, to read the process flow and say, this is what they want. And by doing this, we have been getting some fantastic results. One of the biggest developments we have made, SAP did not support it or does not support it yet, optimization or cubic optimization of trucks. So by explaining and having the support from my IT department, we were able to create a tool, customized tool that allows my material planners to coop the trucks up to 90%. And that, of course, had a significant reflection in transportation cost reduction, but also being able to do more with the same amount of stuff. So this is just one small example of collaborative behavior, but to be successful, IT has to be on the shop floor, has to be on the process together with us and living the process itself. That's my perspective.
Thank you, Paulo.
Okay. It's my prerogative to ask an uninformed question, as I come from the automotive IT side, and I'm not an expert on logistics. Now, we have here on the podium, we have two demanding clients, and we have one service provider and one objective analyst. What is it that the two of you clients need most urgently on the logistics and supply chain side from the IT service provider, from Schukat in this case? And because from where I sit, I see quite a lot of sophistication in the supply chain already. And there have been tremendous improvements on the IT side of the processes that we all deploy. But I'm sure that as a demanding client, you probably have a laundry list of things that you would like to see in the next 2 or 3 weeks. But I'd be curious to hear.
Dana?
Well, I think probably first and foremost is improving overall supply chain visibility. The data analytics isn't there yet. It always fascinates me to hear that we're ahead of the curve when it comes to other industries, because it feels like we're still using chisels and slate in a lot of instances. But I think visibility is number one, and being able to capture data and use data analytics to make decisions faster. Was mentioned this morning about not getting a report from what happened yesterday. That's exactly right. You don't want to know what happened yesterday. By that time, it's too late. You want to know what happened 30 seconds ago. Because if you've got a supply chain that's 5 days long, you don't want to wait till tomorrow to execute it, because it might take you still 5 days to get it executed without a very expensive option.
Now, can I just ask, why is that function not there yet? Is it because your IT is slow to react to a burning problem, or is it because it's more complicated than we think it is?
Yeah, it's more the latter. There are a lot of business tools that we use today that give us those analytics, but getting it down to the granular level of I'm missing 2 parts that go on 2 export models that we're building 2 days from now, stay in the 2s, and be able to correct that issue immediately is paramount to our business. But it's a condition where the visibility tools are there. They're just not granular enough to necessarily execute it the way we would like to. And you use the term for the 2 customers up here that we're demanding, and that's probably true. You know, for Honda, when we're running about 2,500 domestic loads a day, and it isn't a case of if something's going to go wrong. It is going to go wrong, but we need to know as soon as possible to correct it. So I think, and we've closed most of those visibility gaps with IT solutions, with our third-party logistics companies, and we're still working on that next level of granularity. But it's still an issue. You want to be able to see and predict faster always. So even though we keep hearing that we're actually ahead of the curve, we'll never feel like it until it's perfect. And as I tell our team and I tell our third-party logistics company, you have to strive for perfection, but understand that you'll never get it.
And Paolo, so what would be your request to IT?
You are right. We need to be demanding, and the reason is very simple. Volkswagen Group made 11 million cars last year. There's a big pressure on each one of us here on this room if the line gets down. There's thousands of dollars in losses that we cannot afford. So the pressure is there. And of course, if the pressure is on the supply chain, the service providers, IT, 3PLs, etc., they get the same pressure. Now, I was planning to attend this conference yesterday, but at the last minute, I couldn't. Because, as some of you may know, there was a big strike on the border between Mexico and the US. And as a result, there was a 10 kilometers line of trucks. We all like to speak that supply chain is about risk management, that we can replace information and communication instead of stocks. And that's true. But when we run an operation lean, when we have a disruption on that supply chain, either you have the IT tools to manage it in order that you can quickly react, or the result is a line stoppage. This is the way I see it. So I believe we have currently the tools set up to manage our business. Again, if the supply chain runs flawless, we almost need no people, because the MRP runs, transmits the demand, The supplier produces the parts, the transportation is requested, the supplier raises the ADI, material is loaded, arrives to the plant, offloaded, going to the shelves and put it away. And there is almost no need for control of the supply chain. It's a perfect world. Unfortunately, this is not our world. Yeah? 2 months ago, we had a call during our break saying our supplier in Mexico responsible for the production of the Atlas grills burned his facility to the ground. So we kept normally 2 days of stock on material coming out of Mexico. We need to find alternatives to keep our production running, to recover from this disruption. And yes, I think that the tools are there. Now, can we improve still the process? Oh yes. What is my current demand? I don't like to have an army of people making good receive of material. I think that if the material is coming already tagged, without having those paper labels that we spoke already this morning, that we have been using since the 70s, we may have an automatic good receive process and save having an efficiency, I don't know, just in Volkswagen probably and Chattanooga, 15 people. So that's the next step we are looking to collaboratively working with IT. We have a project going on to increase our efficiency, adding value to the supply chain, reducing costs. That's my goal.
So how did you solve your Mexican border problem yesterday?
I had a risk management presentation prepared, and Luis pulled my rug at the last minute. There are several ways of resolving this problem. One of them is through alternative supply chains. So we may have heard about a competitor that also had the same problem with a Michigan supplier that also burned completely. And I think they had to close the plant. And if you don't have an alternative supply chain, there's nothing that you can do with IT or whatever. IT doesn't produce parts. Luckily, we got a supplier on a different country that produces the same commodity, and we were rapidly able to create an alternative supply chain. So we have currently recovered most of the cars that we had lost. We didn't interrupt production.
But is that then your personal knowledge of the alternative options, or does the IT system tell you, okay, you know, get it from there instead of from here? Because that's the ideal situation, I would assume. Right?
That's more on the procurement side. Yes, being Volkswagen a global group, we have a common sourcing system, a common IT sourcing system. So every commodity manager, every buyer is perfectly aware about the parts that are used on different plants all over the world. And not only that, we have implemented a couple of years ago a strategy where we share the base components on several different models, and that helps to a situation like this too. But the quickness of the reaction was able to be set up because of the agility of the people that works in supply chain, and of course with the support of the systems that we have to manage the situation.
Okay. It is, of course, a Q&A, not just restricted to us. So please, if you've got any questions, please, or comments, agreeing or disagreeing, ideally disagreeing, there's nothing like a good argument. Please raise your hands, wait for the microphone to come, or of course you can use the app as well to pose some questions. But I'd like to ask a question about finding the technology. I mean, there's a whole bunch of new technology out there, new systems, the same technology, startups. Everyone's, you know, there's a million startups out there now as well. Whose responsibility is it to find what new technology is out there? Is it the vehicle maker? Is it the supply chain guys finding out that there's a new supply chain technology? Is it the CIO and the IT team to keep an eye out and find out what's happening, what new ideas are out there, and then feed it back, in this instance, to the supply chain team? Should it be your suppliers? Should it be part suppliers should be coming to you with new technology? Again, in our sector in logistics, should it be the logistics service provider who's out and about keeping his ear to the ground and then feeding it back to the end customer, say in this instance the car maker? Who's responsible? Who should lead the search for the latest technology? Maybe I'll start with Shukat there from an IT perspective.
Yeah, so I don't think any one individual group should be responsible. I think it should be a more a team approach in here, because there are certain aspects of business. I think the need is well defined by the business or supply chain or logistics people. They know where the gaps are, they know that where they are running inefficient, or they know where they are not as effective. So based on those inefficiencies or ineffectiveness or the gaps that they have, I think they are in a better position to define the needs in technology. On the other side, IT may have an advantage that we work with several different groups. So I think in my example, we have 8 or 10 different legal entities within the region Americas, and we work also with the global counterparts. So we get to see so many different supply chain, logistics, group solutions within different legal entities. So we are in a better position to make recommendation on such and such problem that you have. We have seen another solution either used by one of your sister company or somewhere outside. So I think it has to be a more teamwork rather than saying who is responsible for it. And vendors would play an equal role both on the IT side and the logistics side, because both sides, logistics and IT, may have a good network with the vendors and may have good relationship. So I think again they could also get this feedback, but at the end I think the decision or the conclusion could be done together in a good partnership relationship, I would say.
Any other thoughts on that?
You are doing a great job on this, Luis, because every time we attend to one of these conferences, there are always new ideas, new suggestions, and I think that the car manufacturers also take advantage on these conferences. But of course, as you saw in the answer of that poll this morning, the 3PLs present, they feel that it's their responsibility. And the reason for this is simple, it's competition. I work today with partners and they want to keep their business, and they have other, like 3 or 4 that approach me this morning, say, we want to enter on your business too. So what can you do different? Can you do it cheaper? Can you do it with more visibility? And that's what produces the change. Concerning startups, I have a good example. Volkswagen supported a startup from California, and their goal is to do a concept like Uber, but for trucks. So we brought them to Chattanooga, we have introduced them to our transportation partners, and we have been brainstorming ways for them to continue to pursue their development. I think we have also an important role in supporting these startups, but also project universities, because that's the way to disrupt the status quo and create some added value.
And Benoit, when you work with, you've even got like an incubation kind of startup incubation center in your university. How do you find? How do you get the ideas? Or how do they get the ideas? How do you support them to get their ideas out? Do you recommend that they go with, a service provider or direct to the end customer, or what is the route?
Many of the new ventures that we have are techie in nature. Okay,
Yeah.
so for right now, there's a lot of stuff related to blockchain, sensors, and a bunch of variants like this. So what we do a lot is have, like, I'll give you a very pragmatic example. We have a partnership with Mercedes. Mercedes came like a month or so ago. They're coming regularly, but now there was a team come in, and we are arranging for them to meet some of the ventures every time they come in. Okay, so like last time they met like with 4 of them. We were sitting, so each one of them pitched their thing. There was discussions, and we selected the vendors so that it would fit mostly with their needs. And so the people from Mercedes, with each one, they had some ideas. Some were a bit far from what they were doing. Some were very, very near. So I think some of them will get contracts pretty soon. But others, it's more like a discussion, exchange, and so on. And from that, Mercedes also got some pretty slick ideas, okay, that they didn't have before. So we're trying to mix and match, okay, the ventures with the companies. What we're trying also to do is when we've got a major project and we know that there's a need for this kind of competency and it's at the venture level, then we just go and invite them to the project team when it makes sense. Because in our mind, there's the company is a large company. There's a bunch of stuff that company can do by itself, okay? It doesn't need to go outside for this. And then if it needs to go outside, it has a bunch of consultants, okay, that are just asking for doing more of this. And then you've got all their vendors that they already deal with or that want exactly like your example, want to do business with them. So there's a bunch of places that this is the turf that as universities we will not touch. So we will say, okay, deal with these, but now we will help you get further. And this get further is where we get like new ventures, grad students, and all this to push the frontier.
And I don't know if this is an unfair question, so you don't have to answer it. But who came from Mercedes? Was it supply chain? Was it logistics? Was it IT? It might not have been logistics or IT solution, but was it someone from the kind of operational side, or was it people from the IT?
I can easily say this, so it's no big deal. First, the team was kind of multidisciplinary, but led by somebody from supply chain, in that example.
Yeah.
But in another project, we're dealing with the chief technology officer, the chief information officer, and then in that context, we've got the supply chain logistics, they come with the team, but now the leader is there. Every time, whatever side it is, it works with a champion that has a broad perspective, strong leadership, has a vision of what he's kind of trying to get together, and he's humble enough to understand that there are gaps that the business can learn, and that there are things that can be gotten from the outside. So Mercedes, it was supply chain in that case, but I can give you many other examples where it'd be different.
Dana?
Yeah, I think there's one of the solutions for us is, and it was actually one of your polling questions this morning about who should bring IT solutions to the table, being 3PLs. And I think that open dialogue with 3PLs has always helped to, because they're doing the execution of our networks, they understand what some of our conditions are, some of our problems are. So we do rely on them because they've got a broader base of customers. And I always encourage them, don't use just automotive. Go outside of automotive to your other customers. And if you have solutions that work for our problems, please pitch them. So I think that's another important connection, another important partnership in locating potential solutions. But interestingly enough, the question about Mercedes and Georgia Tech, we've had similar interaction with Ohio State University on supply chain activities, and that was typically driven by the supply chain teams.
Yeah. But by the way, if I may, on your point, which is, I think it's very important, the notion of logistics service providers is, I'm heading the Supply Chain and Logistics Institute at Georgia Tech. It used to be the Logistics Institute, but then the word supply chain was invented. Now it's a broader picture, etc. So now it's Supply Chain and Logistics Institute for years. But for a long time, it was thought that logistics was a subset of supply chain.
Yeah.
We don't see this anymore. That's not at all the way we see it. We see it as two planes. Okay? There's a plane that is the logistics system plane, and then you've got a plane that is the supply chain plane. When the logistics plane is not working nice, then those guys up there have to dedicate their own fleet, their own assets. But when you begin to have a plane here, the logistics service system that works nicely with competent people, good assets, gotcha, the less this supply chain will have to buy and use their own assets. And it's the same for IT. So so it doesn't surprise me at all, the kind of answer you're telling.
It's interesting the point you raised about looking outside the industry for potential help or inspiration on the technical side. And I'd like to specifically ask Shoka, but the others are welcome to join in. Do you look outside the auto industry for IT solutions to particular automotive problems, either in the supply chain or in manufacturing or elsewhere?
Yes, yeah, all the time. So I'm part of several CIO groups. Actually, this is the only one on the automotive side, okay? I have been part of other CIO groups where we have our partnership with other CIOs from the manufacturing companies. So we look at, what are the solutions that we could share with them. Sometimes it's very difficult, but sometimes we also learn from the finance and insurance industry as well, though we don't find a lot of good overlap there. But definitely manufacturing, supply chain, logistics, those areas, they give us a good insight no matter what kind of business they are in. I think, again, if you look at today's logistics, I mean, we all look at Amazon solution as a target, no matter what industry you are in, you can't argue that they have a better model than most of the others right now. So yeah, I think again that is a very basic and integral part of our thinking is to look for the best solution regardless of where we are.
Yeah, we had the CIO of AGCO on the automotive IT side yesterday, and he had some interesting perspective on, from a related though different industry on what we on the automotive side are actually doing, and it was enhanced by the fact that he spent quite a number of years at Coca-Cola. And I was reminded of that because the CIO of Volvo Cars, I guess you know where he came from. He came from McDonald's. So, and 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, you would hardly ever hear that somebody would enter the auto industry from another area of business. So I think that's a very interesting way to look at things.
I think it happens a lot when you begin to dream of the capabilities that are happening in another field, in another domain. So for example, in the e-commerce, it's clear Amazon is pushing the frontier on many facets. And other companies across the world, they're looking at it, other industries, and say, oh, well, if we could do this, man, that'd be making a huge difference, okay? So now, okay, you begin to say, oh, those guys, they've been used to dealing with this, okay? So now it's much more easy not to think that I'll look outside to get other perspective than when you're not challenged by such disruptive type of innovation. Because those guys like e-commerce, they're moving like crazy. I'm dealing right now with JD.com, okay, in China. This is like 200,000 suppliers. That's 250 million customers every single day. And the promise in China, now they're putting omni-channel supply chain for fresh products. Okay, they've got 7 fresh, okay, that is there. And they promise delivery within a perimeter of their units within 30 minutes. That's from online order all the way to their own, okay, there. So this means that meanwhile it has been picked in the store or elsewhere. This is the kind of game that we used to talk about the automotive industry and see that everything would go to the line and it'd be like majestic. But then we see what those guys are doing at the fulfillment center level now, and it's kind of pushing the frontier even more. And if you're in the automotive and you don't know about what those guys are doing, you're going to be bypassed because the other companies, they're already looking into it.
Any questions from the floor yet? A question over here? Is there anyone with a microphone? Just on at the front.
I'm Wagner from Sintel, Brazil. I'd like to understand, because I work in IT perspective, how supply chain management leaders have involved the IT guys and the IT leaders in the decision about supply chain management risks. This is my doubt.
Okay, so maybe you can start on that one. So how did you involve the IT team with your risk management? Unfortunately, we couldn't hear the full presentation, but how closely did you work with them? How did you involve them?
Well, I'm assuming he's Brazilian, so I think I can speak to him in Portuguese.
But no one else would understand.
That will be a problem.
And we want people to speak in a language from a country that's got a chance of winning the World Cup, so that takes Brazil out of the equation. So don't leave the podium, I was only joking.
I guess the best football player in the world is still having his 5 golden balls. Answering to your question, I have a very close relationship with my chief information officer. He's very supportive, and unfortunately sometimes the organizations are a little bit unfair, because we only notice IT when the system goes down, and then we have to go to the morning meeting and provide explanations. Why was the line shut down? Why didn't we react faster? I feel that we do have the support, but I don't necessarily think this is only a matter of willingness. The last year, the issue was brought in to finance business cases, to implement new technology is becoming harder and harder. So yes, I really like to hear all these conceptual discussions, but in the end, if I'm not able to put together a business case that is going to create a revenue to pay himself within a very short limit of time, it will not get approved. So we collaboratively, together with IT, work the solutions, but most importantly, we try to work on business cases that can be approved upstairs. That's the main message.
Any other opinions on that?
I would maybe combine this with what Arjen had asked the questions to 2 of our customers to see what their expectations are from IT. I would go back to that and maybe link it together. So I think again, I believe you mentioned that we not only need to have the reports from yesterday, but we need to know what has happened 30 seconds ago. Okay, this is what more real-time information that you would like to have. And I would further add to it that maybe that's not the end, but you would like to know what's going to happen tomorrow and the next week, what are the gaps in your supply chain. So that means in your supply chain, any hiccup happened, either third-party supplier, if one of the machine was down, or whatever the reason, somehow that information has to flow, so you know what to expect now tomorrow and the next week because of those interruptions that happen, and then you have a chance to react to it, okay? Then I think Arjen also asked the question, so why those things are not being solved together with IT? And I think there are several reasons that we do not have an ideal or perfect supply chain in most of the companies that we are all representing here. And I think there are several reasons. I mean, either the IT is not capable or do not have enough funding to support you, or that the logistics side may not have enough drive. In different companies may not have enough drive to take IT in that direction, or that maybe in some cases I have heard that maybe logistics teams do not have enough capacity to support IT to develop those solutions, because the capacity will be needed on both sides, okay? There could be the supply chain is not an easy topic to solve, because there are so many multiple systems that we are using, and your vendors are using different systems. So I think to combine all these things and find a perfect solution, it's going to take a lot of effort, both on the IT and the logistics or supply chain side, together with the business and funding and commitment. So I think it could be solved, but it needs to be done all together. And maybe if I could make a provoking comment, that even if you have all these ingredients, it's still not going to be perfect because your expectations are going to change over a period of time. So I think, again, I don't think we ever had a perfect supply chain over the last 500 years, and I don't think we'll ever have over the next 500 years, you know. So it is a continuous improvement process, and I think once you agree on one solution, you apply, you will come up with a better idea to make it more efficient or effective. And I think as long as you see that you are getting better from yesterday, as long as you see that you are getting better from your competition, and you have this drive to make it better and better, I think that could be a good target to achieve, you know, focus.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think part of the partnership between the IT solutions and the business solutions, from a risk management standpoint, are identifying the critical systems for operating your supply chain, and then putting the priorities on the ones that need to recover very quickly, and that's a real key. But then the other side of the risk management is also cybersecurity. As we bring in more cloud applications, vetting out the suppliers we're bringing on, vetting out how well they protect our data and protect their systems is another big entry point where they can help.
Okay. Any more questions from the floor?
Thank you, Dana, and great segue. I was actually going to ask you about how do we think about cybersecurity. In my mind, there's two things that need to be overcome. One is how we value risk, because if we do not attach an economic value to cybersecurity, it's really hard to change decision-making, anywhere from procurement to how you deal with certain situations. And the second one is, how do you guys think about culture? Automotive is a fantastic culture of safety. I think that every independent analyst says that we're very much behind on a culture of security. And so what kind of changes do you think we need to do within our organizations to be more attentive to these kind of issues that are changing very quickly?
That's kind of on your point, Dana, there about, you know, we're all looking for technology. We're looking at our suppliers to bring in technology. We're working with startups on technology. But how much are we really taking the cybersecurity with all these different people entering the market? So I don't know who would, maybe again you shook out as a CIO. And you might have discussed it on the IT side, but obviously some people on the supply chain side wouldn't have heard those discussions.
So again, I think it's important for supply chain logistics teams to work very closely with IT on this topic, because I have seen examples where supply chain get excited because one of the vendors did reach out to them and say, hey, I can give you this perfect solution. I can even install and implement free of charge, you know. There's no cost to it, you know. And they get excited, they go after it, and then next question we ask them, so where are they storing the data? Oh, we didn't check with them, you know. Then they check and they say, oh yeah, they have a cloud and that's where they store the data. So who owns the data? Oh, we didn't discuss that with them. So I think, again, it's important that when the logistics supply team is excited about a solution, partner with IT and work with them, because there are some basic security we all need to take care of, and I think the IT may have that basic understanding what to look for. So they may help you, guide you to say, okay, what to check and what to evaluate and what to agree on. Beyond that point, I think the security is another continuous topic, because I remember several years ago, the cops on the road would come up, they came up with the detector to see your speed, and they would give you a speeding ticket. So on the other side, the drivers start buying those radar detectors, okay? And now they could check if the cops are checking on it. So in some states, and I knew at that time in Canada, it was illegal to have radar detectors, so the police came up with another thing called the detector of the radar detector. Because they wanted to see if you have a radar detector, then they give you an additional ticket now, not only for speeding, but having this radar detector in your car. So security is going to be exactly the same process we'll be going through. So no matter what corrective action we put in place, there are people out there, they're going to find the countermeasures, and then we have to find the countermeasures. So again, it will be an ongoing battle. I don't see an end to it. You know, it will be something that will be, but as long as we are conscious and we all work together, I think we could minimize the risk, but there will always be some risk. It's a part of the business.
If I may say something, last year there was a major attack on a lot of servers from governments to public institutions, you guys recall. The automotive industry was not that major affected. So because of that security you just described, because of the way we store our data, the way we install our firewalls, it's not easy for an hacker to come and try to destroy some of our, or disrupt our operation. However, I have a practical example. We also have a supplier in Mexico last month that had his Chrome line completely shut down, and after a lot of investigation they came to find out that the production line servers were intruded by someone. So now they are looking for almost $1 million to replace servers and so on. And again, we, supply chain, are trying to find alternatives to ensure that although the line is not running, we can get alternative sources of material. So I can say that in terms of the automotive companies, we have really strong protocols. We have to make sure that the suppliers, the first tiers and the second tiers, and sometimes the third tiers that we source, also comply to the same safety protocols. And I think that's where IT also has a role, is to be part of this certification, ensuring that these suppliers later do not become a liability to our supply chain.
I have a question for each of you about a specific technology that everyone's talking about, artificial intelligence. What's always difficult for us who are not right in the middle of the technical developments is to separate the hype from the reality. So what I would like to know is, to what extent is artificial intelligence going to be the solution to most of your problems? Is it already implemented somewhere, and does it do what you want it to do?
I may jump in on this one a bit. It's because it's funny. AI, like when I was younger, this was thought as kind of the science fiction. You'd go to Marvin Minsky and see the kind of stuff they were doing, but it was stuff like minimal. Neural network, I mean, I played with this in the early 90s, okay? It was so ridiculously slow, and it was minimal capability, so nobody would really work into it. But now all this has improved quite a lot in capabilities, and it's been proven many places, so now there's a lot more hype into it. In fact, I'm Canadian, and Montreal is a city that I know well. I've got many friends there. But Montreal now is bidding to be like one of the AI capitals of the world, okay? But the joke is that I know many people that were in simulation, statistics, optimization, and so on. Now they're all AI. Okay? Because now AI, it's like analytics. It started descriptive analytics, predictive analytics, prescriptive analytics, and so on. So clearly, the essence in the most of people, which is the machines, the computer, are going to get ever more intelligent, capable of dealing with much more less structured type of decision making. Yes, this is happening, and it's going to go much, much further than we are. But and can it be avoided? I don't think so. And at the same time, you have like millions of people that now they are kind of labeled into the analytics, AI type of world, and it's not going to change tomorrow. So this is growing like crazy. And all your autonomous cars you're talking, the guides, everything is all AI in a big sense dominated. All your new fulfillment centers, etc. So that you've got swarms of robots moving on the floor. I mean, this is all in the AI world, okay? So, which you can say it's heuristics, optimization, but at the end it's all the same thing. So you're going to see much more distributed reasoning at the edges of the network, like it was mentioned earlier this morning. We're going to see more and more of this stuff. In fact, a large portion of the supply chain and logistics system will become mostly automated. It's been talked several times now. It's humans will be for the strategic planning, tactical planning, and dealing with disruptions. And even on the disruption side, there are going to be a bunch of agents and tools to help focus on what are the disruptions that are really important, which are the ones that we can solve easily, and the ones that really require the humans to do it. So,
but is the supply chain already more efficient at Honda and at Volkswagen as a result of AI implementations?
We are not there yet, but if I may, I'm not sure if I can get this image
Can you pan
captured
in on
here. This is how a car is going to look like, not in 10 years from now, but in a couple years from now. You may see there is no steering wheel. This is now, we are not talking about something that is going to happen in the future. Volkswagen made a partnership with NVIDIA based on exactly the idea of creating cars with artificial intelligence that will allow us all not to drive cars, but to read or to work or to do to play, whatever we want to do. And we are putting aside a significant part of our revenue to invest on digitalization. Right now we have a big transformation all over the world. Our plants are being transformed to adopt the electrical cars. It's not a secret, Chattanooga was one of the sites that was announced as potential place to produce electrical vehicles, which of course will create some additional challenges on the supply chain. But this is what we have to be prepared, and we cannot be prepared to launch this kind of vehicles with label printed paper. Yeah.
And if I may push it, okay, the minute that you begin to have vehicles that can drive autonomously, then it challenges the notion that everybody should have a vehicle that's going to sleep 98% of the time. So this push that makes the mobility as a service avenue even more potential, so that the vehicles can be spread. I'm not telling it's going to be 100%, but there's a drive there. So the more they succeed, the more it's going to change the car ownership and mobility service game quite a lot. And that completely transformed the supply chain logistics associated with it, the whole world.
One last comment. Nowadays, when we buy a phone, we are not buying really a phone, right? We are buying a device that allows us to perform a significant number of other activities. We can play, we can work, we can measure our health. You don't do this, I expect. The car is going to be exactly the same thing. We are not going to sell cars. The business model is going to change. We are going to sell a base vehicle, and then there will be services that will be sold. And this is not only Volkswagen, all the industry is getting ready for this. So again, what is the challenge of supply chain? Well, I'm going to give you again a very pragmatic example. Every new technology that Volkswagen tries to implement on these vehicles is deployed to all our vehicles at the same time. So that by itself already creates a struggle of capability from the supplier side to fulfill all the demand. Yeah? $11 million cars, it was the number I mentioned a few minutes ago. So we need to incorporate these new technologies and also artificial intelligence on our processes in order to make the supply chain faster, more robust.
Dana, you had it?
Yeah, I think from a supply chain perspective, if you think about AI, we're doing a lot of the things that give us the outputs that would normally be analyzed and corrected. But there's still human interaction once those outputs are achieved. You know, an example of that is we continuously feed in manufacturing data that resets our routes, resets our lanes, whether it's daily or weekly or monthly, but there's still human interaction that take care of that. So we're not really there, but we're on the front end. And it's important that you get the front end right, because if the data comes out wrong, the analysis is going to be wrong and the response is going to be wrong. I'm not sure if that made a lot of sense, but.
Yeah. Scheffler?
So again, we are also in the early stage of AI, but definitely that's a direction we see, especially in terms of machine learning and applying this concept to production and supply chain logistics area, hopefully also in R&D at some point. So we definitely see a future in this direction. Yeah.
Okay. So from artificial intelligence over to me, no intelligence. So, but what I wanted to kind of touch on is the opposite of that, really. Human resources, the talent issue. A huge issue globally at all of our conferences around the world. It's a big issue. So for the automotive industry, for supply chain, for technology, you know, how do we address the talent issue? How do we attract them to the automotive industry? Because the good thing about the automotive industry becoming kind of a mobility, a technology issue, is we're now competing with every company in the world for talent. So any thoughts that maybe start with Paolo on the talent, human resources issue?
I would like to tell them that please come and join us. We work 8 to 5, but then I would be lying. The millennials, they have different expectations from the previous generation, and we were having a lot of conversations during the breaks about this issue, and it's a very sensitive issue for me because I have ultimately lost a couple of good resources due to competition. And there was a brand new plant being built in South Carolina. It was announced that another plant is going to be built in Alabama. So the resources are just not there. We are growing economically, but the good thing is probably the salaries are going to increase or not. But the fact is, we have a big struggle in terms of availability, either blue or white collars. Mm-hmm. The Hamilton County employment rate, the county where Chattanooga plant is located, is 3.2%. 3.2%. It's really below, even Tennessee, it's below 4%. So we reached the point, XPO kindly send me every quarter a very nice review of the industry in terms of transportation that they put together. They are really big data analytics oriented. And it's funny to see that the prognosis is in 2-3 years, we are going to run out of drivers, for instance. Mm. So yes, we can discuss a lot about ITs, and that's probably one of my main focus. Mm. If I can do the same work with less manpower, mm-hmm. and therefore combat that constraint, that will be my goal. Mm-hmm. In every process of the supply chain, transportation, mm-hmm. Good receipt, put away, mm-hmm. picking, all the way within the supply chain. Yeah.
And to the others, I'd like to leave Benoit to last for this because he's from a college. So, Shukat and Dana, if you've got any comment.
So yes, I think especially the talent in the technology world is scarce, especially with some of these new technology what we are discussing in here, including AI that you asked question. So there are not that many resources out there easily to be captured. So yes, it's a little challenge. But also on the other side, if you had all these technical resources available to your company, I'm not sure how much you could do with them without having enough business knowledge in them. So at Schaeffler, I think our strategy is to find a good mix. That means to take advantage of all this technology, we still need to understand our business, whether you're in supply chain, logistics, purchasing, or production area. We call it Schaeffler DNA. So you need to understand our business, our organization, how we work. So our strategy is to bring some talented people from outside who can help us, guide us in this technology direction. But at the same time, we free up some resources internally and train them and prepare them in this new technology to find a good balance in that.
Dana?
Yeah, I agree with both comments. There are two staffing issues going on. One is the talent that we're all talking about, but also I think Paolo alluded to the general labor. Both of those pools are rapidly drying up, and his joke about working 8 to 5 is almost something that we have to bring as a reality. And that's another good point where the business side and the IT side come together, giving the right tools to do things better, to do things quicker, to actually be able to get a normal life that most of us never led, is more the reality today than it's ever been. And then likewise on the general staffing side, the pickers and packers and the folks that we employ in our warehouses, that's another case in point for the Amazon effect. I mean, as Amazon permeates all of our areas, they're taking a lot of that staffing. And we were talking before this, do you raise the rates? Well, if you do, it's just a gradual, I don't have to outrun the bear, I have to outrun you, right? It gets to that point, and we drive costs up to a point that we're not competitive anymore.
So from that logic, you're hoping that the second headquarters does not come to your city?
I would welcome it to come to our city, but it just creates another challenge. Not only and the other staffing issue that has been talked a little bit about here are the drivers. That pool is drying up as well, and it's not a glamorous. Well, neither the warehousing jobs or the driver jobs are very glamorous. So we have to make them, number one, pay to a point that it becomes a little more glamorous or a little more attractive. But number two, get interest in a manufacturing environment again. And there was a comment made yesterday about we're all going to become IT people, right? And that's very true. With the manufacturing processes that are going to be required going forward, it's not going to be as much labor. It's going to be more understanding how things are put together and being able to put them together. It's not just a general follow process labor type of environment anymore.
And Benoit, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on either what we need to do to attract them, or the other side, what are the expectations of your students, the industries they're interested in, and how they expect to work?
Let me start with the manpower, like the drivers. We talk a lot about the drivers. I think on the driver's side, if you look at the short haul, the problem is less difficult, okay? The problem is on the long haul. In the long haul, the big issue is simple, is they're leaving for so long, okay? Their family life, their social life, the backache and all this, okay? They sleep in a bunker. So it's a life that is fun for some people, but for many, many others, it's not a nice life, okay? So what we've been proposing for a few years now, and companies are now beginning to think seriously about doing it, is to go relay, okay? So you drive for 200 miles, okay? And then you unhook your trailer and then hook another one, get back where you come from. You're going to sleep home every day. So this kind of stuff where the industry just has to put its act together and say we're going to make it happen. And it's easy, and you're going to solve half the driver problem. The other half will be probably with autonomous kind of things later on. So in the warehouses, it was like 12, 15 years ago, we had the Material Handling Logistics Summit, okay, that was done. And toward at the end, they were talking about manpower. I was a crowd like you guys, okay? And I just say, raise your hand, okay, anybody that you would love or like at least that your kids end up working in a warehouse as a carrier, okay? There was not a single person that raised his hand, okay? So when you understand this, okay, you say, hey man, okay, the kind of job we're putting together, have you tried to work for a day on a pick-to-light system, okay? It's like pigeon type of world, of work, okay? It's kind of very, very mechanical, okay? It's just that they don't have the robot already ready because they've removed everything else. So those are not nice jobs, so it's clear that we're gonna have issues. So getting a lot of that automated, making sure that their jobs are gonna remain, are gonna be nice jobs, then you're gonna have people. We have a misconception that those people are not really educated. They're digital native. Since they were 2 years old, okay, they've had devices in their hands. They know games, they know multiplexing, they do all kind of stuff all the time. And you treat them as illiterate, okay, many, many places. And that's a big mistake, okay? They're digital natives, okay? So now let's climb to the university styles, okay, the new generation. Well, I've been teaching them since 38 years now, okay? So I think I've got a good perspective. And any people tell me, oh, you've got trouble with the new generation. Absolutely not. No trouble at all with the new generation. You get in trouble when you tell them you do this. You tell them, find a problem that you think very interesting, motivating, okay, and you'll work on it this semester. They're going to work their butts and do something really, really slick. Or you give them challenges. Okay? You decide on challenge, you give them challenges. Now they're going to work, they're not going to count their hours. They're going to go like crazy on it. Okay? But if you expect them to be satisfied 8 to 5, etc., no. If you expect them to be thrilled because you tell them that in 15 years they're going to be director, they don't care, okay? Because they don't know in which continent they're going to be, which industry they're going to be. They just think in terms of evolution. They may end up in your company, okay, but that's not their life. That's not their dream. They think differently. So you have to get them challenges, and you give them in the environment that the people like. Okay? You go at Amazon, darn, they can bring their dogs to work at Amazon, okay? Imagine, okay, you do that in your type company. That'd be crazy, okay? But that's what they do, okay? They've got pools, they got a bunch of things. This is the easy stuff, but the rest, they can work all kind of hours, and many times they end up working 70 hours, okay? But now I see them, like at Georgia Tech, we've got the supply chain engineering masters, we've got the industrial engineering that is very well ranked. So we've got a bunch of companies ranking up to get our students all the time. So it's clear that the Amazons of this world, okay, are very big attractors, okay, first level entry job attractor. After that, that's another game, okay, but it's clear that it's a big attractor. But if you go there and offer them nothing much, they're not gonna get in there. And I'll tell you what, the secret, that's not really a secret, but the game is, if you try to hire them when they're graduating, you've lost 80% of the top students, okay? So the way to get them is to get them as internship while they're in school, okay? Train them, filter, understand the ones that could fit with you, treat them really nicely, and at the end, I'm not guaranteeing they're gonna stay with you, but your chance of success will be much better. You'll have understood much more. Your pitch will become much better, and also your company will get better because you'll have fresh blood that you'll have constantly rolling around, and that's gonna make a huge difference. So most companies, they have a model to go at recruiting that is completely obsolete, okay? So my message is simple. There's a lot of smart, dedicated, engaged kids out there that just want to rock the world, okay, and make it happen. They're willing to work hard. But you have to offer them the kind of conditions that is 2018, 2020, and not 1990. Sorry, I'm direct, but I think that's.
And
that's
I think we are all on the same page. The expectations. I have 2 millennials at home, so I know how hard workers they are.
Yeah.
The expectations are very clear, and I believe this generation is much more prepared IT-wise than any of us was before. But let me go back one slide. With a 3.2% unemployment rate and having Amazon, as you just described, even though that you can take the dogs, I didn't know about that, in front of Volkswagen, because it's literally on the other side of the street, there is a competition for manpower that is just not out there. We are growing as a country, we are growing our businesses, and we need to find a solution for to be able to staff our businesses. Right now, we are already in the process of stealing each other manpower, as I described. So we need to attract this new generation, yes, but we also have to find ways of attracting more people that is available to work on the industry, on the warehouse, on the picking. I even create a very electronic, attractive way of pulling these people into the business, but then you have to keep them.
Yeah, I agree.
You need to keep them. Yeah,
I agree.
That's a challenge.
Okay, very good points there, but I think, and as a young millennial myself, I understand your points there, Benoit. I think we have to end the panel now, not least because someone's just sent me a photo of the desserts that we're having for lunch, and I think it's cobblers, but one of my favorite desserts. So I'd like to thank the panel very much for a very interesting discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are evaluation forms in front of you, so if you are crazy enough to miss the final session and you have to leave early, please complete the evaluation forms and hand them in at the registration desk or hand them to one of our team, because your opinions are very, very important to us. The final session this afternoon is back to more of a traditional session, but we'll be looking at different aspects from a couple of different companies, including Toyota, Magna, IQMS, and the Institute for Process Management. I know there's some, perhaps even a few controversial points that are going to be raised in that final panel. So again, we're going to be joined together to continue this love-in of automotive, supply chain, and IT. So please join us for the lunch, the final networking opportunity. Visit the stands of the sponsors to see what new ideas that are out there. You'll see there's also an automotive logistics and supply chain report which is out for 2018. If anyone's interested in that, please let us know. You'll see more information around the hall, or you can again ask one of our team if you're interested in that. But otherwise, enjoy your lunch. Bon appetit, as they say in Portugal. And we'll see you back here at 2 o'clock for the final great session. Thank you very much, everyone.